and across the country, and actually even into Canada. And when that was happening, parents started calling my office, my district, and saying, what are we going to do about this? I don't want to have to worry about my kid getting exposed to measles when I go shopping in the store. And measles showed up on the BART, right? Actually, it's happened 4 times now. And people were calling and saying, why? I'm worried. I had a baby on public transportation, on the subway. What am I supposed to do? And clinics were closed because of measles in Southern California. And not only were they calling my office, they were calling many of my colleagues as well. And actually, Senator Ben Allen, who represents Santa Monica, one of the hotbeds of not getting vaccinated, he was a school district board member there. He was a school board member there, and he was concerned because he said, my concern is this. We've been worried about our low vaccination rates. And by the way, one of the things to keep in mind, even in Marin and Santa Monica, and these places where there are a lot, where so-called hotbeds of not getting vaccinated, a majority of people who live in those areas actually believe in vaccinations, and they want their kids, they think kids should get vaccinated. Even in those areas. And in fact, in many ways, I would argue is that the parents in those areas are more motivated to fight for vaccinations because they start realizing that community immunity is waning in their community. Frankly, here in Sacramento, parents were worried, but they weren't that worried because they're going, okay, well, in general, I mean, we have a couple of schools. We have a couple, I think, Waldorf and a couple of Russian schools. But I mean, in general, it's not this big hotbed of low vaccines. But in some of these other communities, actually, I went to Marin County, and I had so many parents that said, thank you, thank you, thank you, because they were scared of the fact that they saw so many neighbors not, and therefore they knew their child was more vulnerable. That they were on their own, right? It wasn't there was going to be community immunity. I mean, well, the vaccine will do everything it can to protect them, but that community immunity is gone, and that therefore their family's on their own when it comes to these diseases. They pray to God that vaccine took in their child, and because if it didn't, they were in trouble. They couldn't depend on their neighbors to help. And so Senator Allen came to me and said, we need to do a vaccine bill. And Assemblymember Gonzalez in San Diego came to me and the same thing. We need to do a vaccine bill. And we talked about different ideas, and we originally said what we should do is tell every parent what the vaccination rate is at their school. I mean, I know you can look it up, but just push it out instead of having people have to look it up, right? And then we talked about a variety of different ideas he had about trying to give the school districts more authority about vaccinations, about kids getting vaccinated. Because he said, well, my problem is when I was a school board member, we knew a school was in trouble, but there's nothing we could do about it. The way the state law read is that as long as they show up with the exemption, you have to let them in. There's nothing you can do about it. You couldn't stop them. So as you're watching the vaccination rate go down, is there some way you can give school districts authority to do that? It turns out there's legalistic constitutional issues with doing that. But and then we finally said, well, actually, as we looked at each other and the Disney outbreak was continuing to spread, why don't we just eliminate the exemptions? I mean, that's the straightforward answer. Eliminate the non-medical exemptions, right? I mean, what's the justification? There's no major religion that opposes vaccinations. There's some that are neutral. There's no philosophical. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, this is about public safety. In the end, I mean, it's an individual decision that has impact on other people. It's kind of like saying, I don't believe in traffic laws. After all, I'm in a hurry. Why should I stop at stop signs and red lights? We put laws into place and rules, not just to protect each individual, but actually to protect society as a whole. And in fact, when it comes to vaccinations, the Supreme Court and numerous courts have ruled over and over again that you don't have the right to spread the disease. That the state government does have the authority to prevent disease and to act to prevent outbreaks. And that includes requiring vaccinations for school. And in fact, that's why every state in the country actually has laws requiring vaccinations for schools. And as we watched the measles outbreak happen, of course, we noted that the states that had stricter rules didn't have the outbreaks as much as states that had more lax rules. And when people looked at where the measles spread, where it spread within California, where it spread within the country, it was through areas with lower vaccination rates, higher PBE rates, actually. That's the data they had. And also when it came to that pertussis outbreak in 2010, same thing. So there's a direct connection with the spread of these diseases and higher rates of personal belief exemptions or people not wanting to get kids vaccinated. So I think it was very clear, the science is very clear. Now, as you know, there was a lot of brouhaha in the Capitol. I was actually concerned that there would be an outbreak that someone would trace back to the Capitol. Actually, interesting enough, apparently the opponents, for all their bluster about how they think vaccines are dangerous and they don't work and so forth, apparently some of them were worried about that as well. They're preparing things to claim that I started it if it happens. They were readying stuff to say that Dr. Pan intentionally infected kids to try to get his bill passed if such a thing happened. Of course, you know, but that's another story. So they were quite, it was quite an exciting time. They screened things. Well, it's interesting because, you know, frankly, there was, you probably saw the news reports. The president of the Chiropractic Association told people to stalk and harass one of the lobbyists, actually, who represented the American Academy of Family Physicians, by the way. She didn't represent any pharmaceutical companies. She represented the physician group. And then as well as other people, there were a variety of threats made, etc. And actually, there were bills across the country, and many of them actually fell. In Oregon, there was an attempt, and that author withdrew. Washington, other places, but here in California, we did not bow to the pressure. And talk to my colleagues, explain to them what herd immunity means, what the science was behind vaccines. And actually, it was interesting because even my colleagues who didn't vote for the bill, who said that they were reluctant to vote for the bill, all agreed that vaccines worked. Almost all of them agreed that vaccines were safe. What they said is that I'm concerned, so what I'm concerned about is that the people who don't like vaccines, this is their most important issue, and they'll remember that in the ballot box. While the people who support vaccines have other issues, and that's not what they're going to decide their vote on. So just keep that in mind. So I think we need to hold people accountable when they don't want to support the science that actually is going to keep people safe. And I think, unfortunately, we see a reflection of that most recently in the GOP debate. We have two physicians who really don't have an excuse not to know better. I'm not sure if Trump has, he should know better too, but that's another story. But the fact that they didn't call him on it, right? And I'm embarrassed that Dr. Ben Carson, who is an eminent pediatric neurosurgeon, who clearly before he ran for office didn't take the kind of positions he's taking now. At least he did reinforce the fact that vaccines don't cause autism. But still, to then perpetuate myths about the timing and so forth, it's disappointing. So clearly it's becoming politicized, which is unfortunate. Right? This should not be a political issue. And I told my colleagues that I tried very hard not to make it a partisan issue. I mean, I know the way the votes fell, but I tried very hard not to. I didn't go and blame Republicans for this and said Democrats are better for that. Because this should not be a partisan issue. This should be something that we all agree on. This is not an issue to try to seek partisan advantage. Because that is bad for society and bad for our community. Hopefully we can all agree on the science. We can all agree that we want to keep people safe. And that's what this bill is about. This bill certainly is not about mandatory vaccination or taking away informed consent. Because after all, everybody who goes see their child's doctor for the child is going to need to give consent to the vaccines. And if you don't give consent, and you don't want to get your child vaccinated, they will not be vaccinated. But there's a consequence to that. And that consequence is not to punish someone who decided not to vaccinate. It's to protect the other children. This is not a punishment. This is protection. This is safety. And I know you know this. And so we cannot make policy where we put other people at risk to protect the privilege of a few. We want the privilege to not do something that puts other people at risk. So we're not going to force them to do it, but there's a consequence that is based on the protection of others. That's what that consequence is about. It's not a consequence that's punished, it's a consequence that's about protection of others. Because that is the role for all of us. That's what we swore to do as school nurses, as a pediatrician, to try to protect the health of our students and other people in the community.